Studio and the Maximo 7.5 configuration tools. My name is Liz Ruena, and I'm the Marketing Director, and I'll be behind the scenes with this webinar. So first, just a little webinar housekeeping. Everyone's currently muted in the audience. We'll do questions and answers at the end of the demo. And at that time, I will ask you to use the raise your hand feature on your webinar panel, and I will call your name and open up your line. In the meantime, as the demo is going along, we suggest you type in any questions using the question feature. Al Johnson will be answering those live through text during the demo. Just a little introduction to TRM and RulesManager Studio. We've been in business for 20 years. 18 of those have been entirely focused on Maximo. So we're considered one of the most experienced Maximo partners you can find in North America. And we also offer high-performance cloud for Maximo, so a Maximo solution in the cloud, and we bundle ours with RulesManager. So what is this RulesManager Studio? It's a software add-on for Maximo with tons of functionality. Our cornerstones are configuration, operation control, and a performance management solution for Maximo. What it does for our customers in general is it greatly reduces the time, risk, cost, and complexity across the life cycle of Maximo. So with this webinar, since Maximo 7.5 came out, people were wondering, where does RulesManager fit in, and what can RulesManager do that Maximo 7.5 cannot do? And that's exactly what Andy's going to show us over this demo. And with that, Andy, I'm going to go ahead and make you presenter so you can share your screen. And you should have control now.
Okay. Let me share my screen.
Andy?
Yep. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yep.
Okay, good. Okay. You should be seeing my screen. All right.
See your screen, yep.
So what I'm starting with here is our app designer perspective in our RulesManager Studio. From here, we can control and view all configurations, whether they were built using RulesManager or Maximo's configuration framework. What you can see here is I'm showing you a list of apps currently with configurations on there, as well as any kind of currently data restrictions or auto scripts. I'm also going to enable right now. I'm currently hiding my conditional UI, but I'm going to show them. And what you'll notice is that out of the box, there are a lot of applications with conditional UI configurations already attached to them. We're going to do most of our work right now on the WorkTrack app. So I'm going to open up my app editor and show you exactly how many customizations we have currently established in WorkTrack. I've gone ahead and added a few of my own customizations, very simple data restrictions that hide data. These appear as green dots right here. And so as you can see, this is signifying a configuration on this field. So green dots are signifying a configuration on a field. The red dots, as you'll notice sprinkled throughout the application, signify configurations on the controls themselves. So these would be hidden or a style or something along those lines. And I will build one of those a little bit later in this demo to show you what I mean. Down on the bottom here, on the bottom left, I've created a task list of all the talking points for this demo. This is one of the many capabilities that Studio has. There are several other capabilities that come with Eclipse because this is an Eclipse plugin. You can have everything from source control to task management systems to even web sphere administration. And that all comes in inside of Eclipse. So to start, I'm going to create a very simple Maximo configuration for defaulting priority. So let's start with my first task. What I'm going to do is default the priority in WorkTrack to 2 when this is a new one. So I'm going to close this. Go in and let's navigate over into the browser using this. We're going to go over and create an auto script. Right now I have no auto scripts currently set up. So to create one, what we're going to do is create an object launch point. Now, when we do this, you'll notice that we have 4 options for an object launch point: an add, an init, update, and delete. In this case, this is going to be defaulting a field, low priority specifically. We're going to have to do this on initialization of a work order, and we're going to have to name our launch point. So let's call this next. Oops, got my work order object. And I'm going to go ahead and add my variable, which will point to my low priority. You'll notice that I'm using a lot of the assistance that comes with an out-of-the-box Maximo screen. So this is the Maximo configuration framework. And I'm also going to set my language to JavaScript because that's what I prefer right now. One of the beauties of Maximo's autoscripts is that you can choose your own language. So they have many languages. Python and JavaScript are the 2 big ones. And we're going to call this default score. Now I'm going to write my script. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to be using tools really that only use, that require no prior Java knowledge. So this is a very simple rule. And I do know that there is a onAdd variable tapped into a lot of autoscripts. And I'm going to use that and say if this is an onAdd, then go ahead and set my variable that I had to 2. And I believe that's all I needed to do. So I've just created my autoscript to basically default that record. I'm going to go in and let's see how this works in my work order tracking. You notice now my low priority is being defaulted to 2 when I create a new record. So that's how I would create an autoscript using Maximo configuration framework. Now I'm going to create a little bit more common configuration. This one will be a 2-part and can be accomplished without, can't be accomplished without the RulesManager engine. So let's bring up the second task. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the WONUM include the parent, if there is a parent. And I don't want to change the underlying WONUM data, the data that's actually in the database, because by doing that, any existing work orders that I have would break if they're connected to other records. But my users want to see the parent WONUM. And so if I go back to my screen, you'll notice that all my WONUMs here are just single 4-digit numbers. But I'm not seeing any parents that are associated with this. And so the goal here is to show those as part of the WONUM. And secondly, I'm also going to inherit the priority and the work type from the parent, if there is one. So let me bring back up my work track. I'll bring back up my editor by double-clicking on my application I want to configure. And to do this, we click on a field. And what you'll notice is we give you a lot of options on what you can build. And so these are what I'm going to specifically tap into right here are my field rules. What I'm going to add is what we call a surrogate event. And what this will allow me to do is return a string or a value that will be represented to the user, but will not actually change the underlying data. So the actual data underneath this application will remain intact, but the user will see something, whatever I want them to see, whether it's conditional or not. So I'm going to say my return value, and then I hit control space. And what we have here is content set. This is not something that you saw in AutoScript because it doesn't exist. In RulesManager, we try to do this so that you can build your scripts without any prior knowledge of Java API or anything like that. We're using, we've simplified a lot of the Maximo's business logic API or documentation usage so that you can use it on what you see is what you get kind of experience. And so what we give you here are a bunch of variables that you can choose from, one of which is the work order for which this event is firing. And so what we want to do here is we want to select work order, and then I hit dot, and this is called chaining. And this will give you all the fields and methods and properties of that work order record that you're dealing with. In this case, we want to find the work order, the WONUM field. So I can start typing, and this will start narrowing down, as you can see, the fields that I have in my completion. And it also gives you the description and the type of field that you're dealing with. So in this case, I'm dealing with WONUM, and that's what I want. So by default, I really just want to give the value of the WONUM field. But if there is a parent, go back to the work order, I want to provide the parent number as part of it. And as you can see, it's starting to filter down again. And let's see if this has a value. And so as you can see, I've got an is null property on this field. My parent is not null. And this is basic JavaScript syntax, which you would have to use if you were going to do any kind of configuration in Maximo. I'm going to add and that's my surrogate rule. And secondly, well, let's first go ahead and make sure that this worked. I got to commit my rule first, and then hit refresh. And go in, hit RulesManager, hit refresh. And you'll notice now that we have a couple of work orders on here that already have attached their parent number, so that you've already noticed that your list page has changed. But I haven't changed the underlying data. The second part of this is to make sure we inherit the priority and the work type from the parent if it's been set. So what I'm going to do is now add an onChange rule. This is, I find my field on my screen, and I select new field rule and say onChange. Open up my rule, and let's make the script happen. And there's a property on each record that tells you whether this record is new. And I want to check to make sure that I have a parent. And now I'm going to set my fields appropriately on this work order object. But I'm going to need to gather that data from the related parent object, because at this point, we know that there is a parent. So now I'm going to start typing. And one of the other things that we give you as part of the properties are all related records. And so what you'll notice is I have the parent field, but I also have a parent relationship. And this will give me information about this relationship. And this is a predefined relationship that comes in an out-of-the-box system. But if you have your own relationships, you've added your own relationships and fields, we will provide those to you as well. So this content assist will provide you whatever your system has. In this case, we're using the parent relationship. And I want to get the row priority from my parent. Now I want to set that. I want to set my work order row priority to that value. And I'm also, for good measure, going to do the same thing for work type. And now you can see that I now have a rule on the parent field, as well as the WONUM field. So I have two rules, and this is a two-part rule. And I'm going to commit this and test it out. I'm going to create a new record, And you'll notice my other script is still firing. I'm going to go ahead and set my parent work order to the first one on the record. And you'll notice that my work order number automatically changed to show me that I now have, that's what it will look like to the user. I didn't change that it's actually, the WO number is actually 1302, but I did make it appear differently to the user in front of it. And you'll also notice here, in the work type is now EM, and my priority is now 1. And that's because I'm now inheriting that when I set it from in the field. I now inherit it, and that's how easy it was for me to create that rule. Let me go ahead and mark this completed. This one's completed as well. Might as well do that. And we'll go on to our next task. All right. So our next task is to create a rule that will interact with the user. So we're going to take this to the next step and basically say, on a change of a field, I want to interact with the user by asking them a question. This, again, will be 2 parts. First, I'll assume that most of you know what it takes to attach a domain to a field. As you know, you have to go into the configuration, the database configuration. You have to create a domain first, and then you have to go into database configuration and assign that domain to that field. And then you have to go into admin mode before you can apply the changes, and then go back out of admin mode so that you can see and test the result. The Rules Manager tools will expedite this. So what I'm going to do is use the tools in Studio to basically create this domain. And then on top of that, I'm going to add an on-change rule that will ask the user if they want to set the risk to high if they set a certain field. So let me go back, and this is the field that I'm going to choose. So risk assessment is the one I want to choose. And let me open up my editor here and go ahead and find my field on the screen and assign it. So the first thing is I find my field, the work order risk. I'm going to create a new field. I'm going to do a value list. This is a domain or a value list. So this new event is called a value list. I'm going to open that up. And using our editor, which is highly customizable, or it can be very simple. In this case, we're making it very simple. I'm going to set my title. I'm going to bind my column. And I'm going to say that this is going to be a static, so I'm just going to have some static data inside of there. I'm going to make my own dialog because there wasn't one previous on there for Maximo. I'm going to go ahead and create the data in my data source. And it's just going to have 2 fields. It's going to have high and low because I don't want to make this too complicated. And I'm going to customize the display. And say I want my header to be risk with a capital R. And I don't have a description column, so I'll take that out. And that is a very simple, customized static value list. We have the ability to make any kind of SQL statement query into the database to gather any kind of data you want, whether you're using a join for SQL or any other complex SQL statement you want to use. Or you have the ability to tap in and use the MDO sets that Maximo has. So you can say specifically, I just want the assets, and then you can put conditional result filters so that you can filter out that data as you want. We also have something called the ad hoc, which is a bit more complex, which will allow you to make calls to web services or any other places, third-party places, to gather information and bring it in and show it as a domain in Maximo. And we also have all these other properties on these value lists, which will allow you to disable smart fill, enable smart fill, auto-clear the value if there are none available once you clear out a dependent field, all kinds of things that will make this a little bit more customizable to your preferences or your business's preferences. So now that I've made that change, I'm going to commit my rule, refresh. And the second part, so before I go ahead and show that rule in play, I'm actually going to go ahead and make the second part of this, which is I'm going to ask the user if the risk should be set to high when there is a leak, and so specifically a pipe. So in order to do that, I'm going to go back to my app editor. I'm going to find my field that I want to deal with. And in this case, I want to deal with a problem code and just say let's go ahead and make an on change on this field. As it shows up now, I can go ahead and edit my on change. And I'm going to start writing my rule. This basically says if, hit Control Space, get my content as if, I'll notice that I'm given the problem code that I'm changing. If my problem code equals leak and Control Space, and the first object that comes up is browser. And as you can note from the description, the browser object gives you access to the current user's browser. I can use this browser object to interact with the user. I'm going to ask the user. And there are many things that I can do on here, but one of them is ask. I'm going to ask the user a question and see if they answer yes or no. And I'm just doing a very simple question. And if so, if they say yes to that, I'm going to set my risk to high. And now let's commit that rule. And let's go test it out. You notice now there is a value list or a domain attached to my risk assessment. Let's open it up. You can see that I have high and low. And I'm going to go ahead and give myself a problem code of leak. And it should pop up a question, which it does. And using the Maximo 7.5 heads down interface, it gives me the question mark. When I open it up, it asks high risk, and I can say yes or no. If I say yes, you'll notice that now my risk assessment is high. That's how easy it was to interact with the user. I'll mark this as completed. And I actually did this one too. I had to. Now, let's simply hide our asset priority when there is no asset. So what you notice here is that we have a priority, and it's being shown even though we don't have an asset on my screen. And so what I want to do is hide this field when there's no asset specified for this record. And so I'm going to go back into here. I'm just going to change it. And to do that, I'm actually going to use conditional UI. Why? Because I can, and I can do this without any prior Java knowledge. So the first thing that I'm going to have to do is go ahead and go into Application Designer. And we're going to customize the work order tracking. And what I'll need to do is add a signature option to allow me to do this. We'll call this one hide AP. And this is so that I can attach it to a condition. Save this. Now I'm going to need to go into my security and make sure that I grant it. And I'm going to do this for my group so that I can actually see this. But you have to assign this to a group. Find my work order tracking and find my newly added signature option. Grant it. Save it. And go back into my Application Designer. Hopefully I'm not going to go too fast for everybody here. Sometimes the screens don't follow or keep up, but I'm trying to move fast on this so that we can get through this and get everything in the amount of time that I So I'm going back to work order tracking. I'm going to find the field that I want to hide, which would be my asset load priority. So my properties. Go to advanced. I'm going to tap the attach the option that I made. And I'm going to configure my conditional properties. So first I'm going to add my max admin group. And then I'm going to add my condition. But I don't have a condition, so I can't, I believe, actually go to it yet. So I have to go back over and create my condition now. So I'm just going to hit OK on this, and then save. And let's go into max conditions and create my conditional expression. Great. So let's create a conditional expression. And my expression is going to be for the work order object. And I'm going to say when my asset num is null. And also for good measure, I'm also going to say my location is null. And my number is 106. And I've created my condition. Let me go back into Application Designer. Find my field again. Now I can add a new row and select my condition number. That's it. And you'll notice that I now have my expression. Asset num is null and location is null. And I'm going to enter whatever property that I need to make this hide. So my display, and I'm going to say false. So when my condition is true, when asset num is null and location is null, and let's go ahead and set my display to false. And when it's false, I make this my display true, and then show it. And let's go check it out. First, let's make sure that it's not hidden when I go in here. Okay, so now I have an asset num and a location, but it's still not, it's being hidden always. And that's because I need to refresh my screen, and sometimes you need to do this by restarting the server. So I'm going to disconnect my stuff and restart it real quick. Sorry about this. This is just part of the process. And luckily I have a fast server, and so this will bring out. Once this starts up, I'll reconnect and go ahead and make sure that that conditional UI is hiding. And again, I'm reminding you, I'm doing this because I'm trying to do this by showing you multiple ways of doing things, but also multiple ways of doing things without needing to do any kind of Java coding or knowing Java API. So specifically, one other way to make sure that we're using conditional UI in this case. And now it's running, so let me connect. I've reconnected. I browse into it and see and make sure that the conditional UI is hiding. And it's the first time coming in, so it's got to cache a bunch of stuff. Okay. And I'm going to go to my 604 and make sure that it's not hiding. Good. I can see my asset location priority. If I create a new record, it is now hiding, and that's because it is null. So I've gone ahead and completed this task. Now, to contrast that, I'm actually going to open up work order tracking editor, and I'm going to just hide my scheduling information, and that's this entire section which already has some data hiding, or data restrictions, I should say, rules written on it. You can see those with the green dots. But I'm actually just going to hide this, and I'm going to say, let's hide this. If I don't have any kind of, let's just say, work type. Because I can't schedule anything unless I have assigned a work type. Go ahead, open up my completion like I did before. I have my work order record, work type. So I'm hidden when my work type is null. I'll go ahead and commit this. Go back into my app. Create a new record. You notice I don't have a scheduling section. Let me go ahead and set my work type to EM. And you notice that now I have my scheduling section. And so that's how fast it was for me to write a really quick hiding rule. It does something very similar besides the entire section. Completed that. And lastly, I'm also going to say, you know what, for convenience purposes, let's go ahead and make it so that my tab, whenever I create a new record to come into here, you'll notice that my focus is originally on the work order number. Well, for the sanity of my users and to make them more efficient, I'm actually going to say, let's start our focus on the priority field because that's more important. And then we'll go to the work type, and then we'll go back to the WONUM. And so to do this, I'm going to create a work order rule by right-clicking on my WO track and say focus order. Open up my app wizard. And I'm going to say priority is my first focus, work type is my second, and then we'll end up at work order. WONUM. Save this. Commit it. Refresh. And let's go back in and test my rule. And you notice now my priority is the first focus, and so I can immediately start typing. So this maximizes the efficiency of my users, reduces the amount of clicks, is what you like to say in the business. And then when I hit tab, I'll go to the next field which I specified, which is work type. Then I'll end up at WONUM and go back to the default tab order. Now I'm going to actually go ahead and synchronize all this information that I've actually added to Maximo's configuration to the Maximo configuration framework. That includes all the things that I went through with the conditional UI as well as the auto script. I'm going to synchronize that, and let's look back at my editor and see how customized my current application is. It always takes a minute sometimes, depending on how fast you restart your server. And when I open up my WO track, this will be my editor, and it'll show you all the different rules and all the fields that I have configurations on. So you can see all the green dots denoting that I have fields with configurations, the red dots for controls, as well as my focus order, and even the controls which are sections or tables. I also have those. Any number of these, if I click on them, I can edit them if they have one or add new ones. And on the left-hand side, you can also see my on init rule, and this was the auto script I had written. When I open this up, it brings me the editor. It shows me the script that is this on init, which is the if on add, my view priority. And I can also click on a button to allow me to edit this directly in Maximo. And I'll give you all the fields that also have customizations. This includes all of my hidden, as well as any other RulesManager engine rules that I've had added as well. Now let's take this to the next step and analyze our configurations. we're going to analyze the performance of the configurations. Using the studio tools, we can check to see that all our configurations are performing well and not hindering our system. And this is really important before you go. It's a crucial step, actually, before you go into a production system. So I'm going to open up my operations console. This is our operations perspective. And I've already got my connection made. I'm going to select the application server in my cluster that I want to deal with. And first thing I'm going to do is open up my Mpl Monitor. This is a graph over time, which will allow me to analyze any memory that's being utilized. This is especially useful if you're dealing with load testing. Load testing is a bear, and oftentimes you just have to sit there and watch your graph, your logs, in order to see what's going on with your memory and stuff like that. We provided a graph over time that will analyze this and show you as your number of MBOs, or the records in memory, is what that is, goes up, as well as your JVM usage. So you can watch to see if your JVM is increasing rapidly or not. This graph will help me basically tell if there's a rogue configuration that I've just added that reads an enormous amount of data and thus impacts our system. There isn't going to be, because I really haven't added anything in this demo that would do that, but it's useful to have up. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to record my configuration activity during the next few steps. So up here, this allows me to record the configurations that I just added and the activity that I have. This will help me locate, will help me locate any poor performing configurations that I may have just added. I'm going to go to work order tracking, and I'm going to say, let's create a new one. And I'm going to actually go ahead and add an asset, because I want to fire off my other configuration, which allows me to see my asset location priority. And I'm also going to assign a parent, which will show me, change my work order num as it's displayed to me. And I'm going to set my leaky pipe and set my high risk. I've done all those, and I can hit stop. And now I can actually see, when I hit stop recording, it gives me the detailed information about all the configurations that I added, not only conditional UI, but auto scripts, as well as the RulesManager rules that I had also written. And you can see how many times these have fired. So, for example, our auto script, because it's an on and net, has fired for every single record. Even though we only wanted to do it on create, it's firing for every single record. So when I went to the list page, it fired for all the records that I saw there. And the same thing happens with surrogate fields, but I'm actually need that because it changes the way I view every WONUM on that list page. So that's appropriate. And then you can see all the other conditions that I have on here, as well as the ones that I've written, including the 106. And that fired 4 times. Even though it seems that I only should have fired once, it fired 4 times. And then you can see the other rules I've written, such as the on changes that I have, etc. And if you wanted to, in a production system, or in your QA system, or in your development system, you can temporarily disable any of these events if you find that there's a problem with them by just right-clicking and say disable. That will only be for the life of the JVM. Once the JVM restarts, it'll be enabled again and will start firing again. So this is just a temporary mechanism. So if you find that something is performing poorly and you want to stop it from firing. Finally, I'm actually going to go ahead and since we're running out of time, do this quickly. I'm going to document this, and this is the final step. I'm going to document this and say, let me create a spreadsheet that includes my description, my events, and my scripts, my condition. I'm going to just very simply say I want to do this for, include my data restrictions and auto scripts. I've done this before. And this will automatically launch and open up a spreadsheet. And that includes all my events and any of the other columns that I want to include. But it also includes my auto scripts and some of my data restrictions on here, as well as the RulesManager rules that I had written in a nice, easy spreadsheet that I can therefore email to my boss, who is currently listening to this demo. And I think that's about all the time that I have. So I will open this up to questions. if anybody has any questions or wants me to elaborate on anything, please feel free to jump in and ask them.
Okay, great. Thanks, Andy. So everyone, again, if you have a question, just raise your hand, and I will open up your line. And I see, Dinesh, you have your hand up, so I'm going to go ahead and open up your line.
Actually, Patsy does.
Hi, it's Patsy Crawford. I couldn't get the GoToMeeting to work on my machine, so I'm bothering Dinesh at his machine. One question I have, and it might be a big question, so you don't have to answer it right now. I just want to throw it out there. We are thinking of we're in the middle of doing we may be going to the 7505 patch level for our upgrade we're working on, and as part of that, we may be upgrading Rules, the RulesManager Studio. Our question is, how do things get stored in XML files? Because at least with our initial porting to this, we'd want to try to have it be backward compatible and save our XML files the way they're currently being saved, and would like to understand if this new formatting would be creating new XML files automatically behind the scenes.
No. In fact, we will read your existing XML files, even if your XML files are all the way from RulesManager 5.2, which is our first major release of RulesManager. Those XML files are read and will not be changed at all unless you manually go ahead and change them. You're adding your own rules or modifying them in any way.
And you'll have to change your equipment to asset, that's all.
Well, yeah, if you're in 5.2, and between 5 and 6, they changed.
Yeah, we're on Maximo 6. We're upgrading to 7, but we've already done the upgrade. We're in the middle of, we're upgrading next June officially, but as part of our 7 rollout, we're thinking we're going to be moving to this new version possibly, and so I just wanted to note, so it's backward compatible, and then
yes.
Out of the box, when you're creating these things, if I just were doing this for the first time on 7, what does it do in terms of storing things in XML files? Does it just do a generic rule.xml file to start out with, or I just was curious behind the scenes how these things get saved?
It does. It adds to your rules.xml file. It can add to any file that you want as well. So you can create child files. So if you want to do things by work order or WOTRAC, a file just for that, you can create these rules and add that XML to that, and it will be appending that XML, the new XML that it creates to those. And all the things that you've seen here, all the rules, were done using RulesManager's rules and XML. So it's all XML that goes into those files.
So that may just be a little bit of a learning curve to understand how these things are going to get. And maybe even if you guys have an idea about best practices moving forward, we could start to change the way we have it for 7 if it's.
Absolutely. The way we've written this is that you won't really have to worry about the XML. The whole point of the development environment, the RulesManager Studio, is that you won't have to ever read the XML unless you need to send it to, say, support to figure out what's going on. We are actually pretty quick at reading XML and figuring out what's going on.
Our problem, though, is that our way of doing configuration management and versioning is that we have these different asset.xml, workorder.xml, whatever you name it, and we version all these things, and that's how we know what was most recently in the system and what got put to test in production.
Yeah, absolutely. And source control is a great benefit for that as well if you switch over and start using that. And the beauty of files is that it connects very easily to a source control system. Especially in Studio, where you can get a plugin for your specific source control system for versioning, so you're making sure only certain versions make it in, and you know what versions and who was the last modification, etc.
Right. We just have a certain system we're using right now, so it sounds like it's temporary. At least for right away, it would be backward compatible and save it to the file we want it to save it to.
Correct.
And we could work with TRM a little bit more about best practices and maybe a different way of doing stuff.
Absolutely. We definitely help with those.
Okay, great. Thank you, Patsy. Does anyone else have a question? I'm looking for additional hands up. Bear with me one second, Andy.
No problem. And yes, to elaborate on a question that was asked earlier, I just want to make sure that you realize the only reason I restarted the server was because I needed to do that to get Maximo to update its conditional UI cache. Any rules written for the RulesManager engine do not require restart of the server. You just need to write them as I showed you the whole time, just commit, refresh, and go. You don't need any kind of app restart, any ear builds, or anything like that.
Excellent. And I see no additional hands up.
We have a question in the text, Andy. You can answer it live.
Okay.
He's asking, Can we copy a set of information from the work order screen to the work order task screen?
Yes, you definitely can. Anytime you need to copy information from one screen to the other screen, typically it's just copying information from one relationship to another relationship, whatever field to another field. And with the help of the Content Assist, you can be able to do that without needing to know much of the underlying way that the relationships look and stuff like that, because we'll provide all that information to you. You don't have to go discovering that information inside of Maximo.
Yeah, the task is related to the work order you're on, so you write a simple rule where you access the work order that's attached to the task and say, bring these 5 fields over. It's basically a 5-line to bring over 5 fields.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Al.
Sure.
And Julie, it looks like you have a question. I've gone ahead and opened up your line.
Yeah, we wondered what version this was of RulesManager Studio. Is this one that's been released?
Yes, it is. This is RulesManager Studio with RulesManager 5.03.
Okay.
Great. Let me see. One more time, I'm checking for hands, Andy. I do not see any additional hands up. So I think those are all of our questions, and we're close to the top of the hour. I wanted to let everyone know that we will be sending out a link to this recording so you can review it or share it with your colleagues, and we hope to see you on our next webinar. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.